Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Typhus Leaf Glover, and today we have another Canon of Design quick tips. Yes, they keep coming. I hope you guys like these, and the purpose of the videos is to kind of keep your skills fresh and help me change the future of art. So the more artists that know about this and know about these techniques can share it with other artists, and you know what? We're going to change the future of art together. So that's the purpose. So looking at this Millet painting, which was a requested artist, so make sure you leave a comment in the section below if you guys want me to take a look at a specific master artist, and I'll see what I can do. All right, so Millet was requested, and we're going to take a look at the grid first. So right off the bat, if you take the image size and you calculate the ratio, we're going to do this 1474. I'm looking at these pixels here. You can use the inches too, but I just use the pixels because it's easier. Divide that by 1002. We're going to get a ratio of 1.47. So that's very, very close to our 1.5 rectangle, which is cool. So when we add that on here, and the way you know that is you can check the ratio guide in the dynamic symmetry book, and you'll see all these different ratios and get the specific ratio that's closest to the rectangle, okay? But this one's kind of tricky because it's close to our 1.5, but then we also have certain diagonals within the composition that don't necessarily match our 1.5. Plus, you know, you can see the little bit on the top and the bottom, so it's not matching perfect. That always leads us to believe that maybe there's another option out there when the diagonals aren't matching the grid, and then when there's space left on the sides. So what I did was I looked in the ratio guide also, and I found that the root 6 overlapping increment 2 is 1.469. So I tried that one, and what do you know? It worked perfectly. Let me just move this across the composition. And we're going to see the edge of these hay bales here. Look at this. Right here, same diagonal, even over here, same diagonal. So that's leading me to believe that he used this grid configuration instead of the 1.5, and it fits perfect. Okay, it fits edge to edge all the way around, and then these diagonals in the middle also line up here. So that's what led me to believe he used this one. This is just the mother rectangle, the two overlapping root 6 rectangles on the second increment, and that's explained in the book. I don't want to confuse you guys. This overlapping stuff can confuse me sometimes too, but just keep it simple. The grids are already made up, so you don't have to worry about how to overlap them or anything like that. You just slap them on the image and use the ratio guide to help you out. So when we use this is the basic armature, just basically minimal lines. So we can see what's locking in here and paralleling. So it's not much. So if we were to paint this, we can see the collar here is locking in. And I'll show you everything that's locking into the grid system we're going to use. You can see these sickles down here is locking in, okay, and then her head and shoulders here. This right here, this under the ground here. If we were painting this, we'd want a more complex grid system to help us organize these smaller elements. And so what we do here is just use the root 6 grid, and you can break these down however you want, but the grid package has this included. It's root 6 overlapping major area divisions 60, which just means there's 60 smaller root 6s inside of this overlapping mother rectangle. So that's all that is, and that's going to help us organize these smaller elements within the composition. How I use these grids is a light pad. I use the grids taped onto the back of a drawing paper, and then I use a light pad to organize the composition, and that's all shown in the ecosystem video that I created, and I'll link that above. But basically you're just using these smaller grids to help you organize the smaller elements. Makes sense. So I'm going to show you which areas are locked in. I'm going to reduce this one, and if we zoom in, you can see even these cows in the background, their legs are locking in here. And he's organizing them with this edge here. This is organizing here. It's locking in. This area here, as mentioned before, right here, the shoe. Okay, so you just use it, draw your subject out according to the grid, add lines if you need to. See how this body's paralleling the sinister diagonal here? Pretty nice. Got this area locking in, the shoes locking in here. Okay, so that's the grid, and that's how we found out which areas were locking in and how the grid was configured. Okay, we want to see these added lines here. So he's taken this eye here and this eye here. The intersection points are considered eyes, and those are mentioned in previous videos, but you can take this intersection point, run a line across to the next intersection point, and that diagonal will help you organize your composition further. You want to use the diagonals within the grid that you're using, but if you need to develop the grid further, then you can use these added lines, and that helps you conform to the geometry of the frame. So we've got this point, this eye, and he runs it across here to this eye, and we can see how our body's lining in perfectly here, which also this is paralleling the sinister diagonal. So it's got a little slight curve there, but if you've used the grids before, you know that you can swoop them up, parallel, swoop down, touch the grid, and then come around. This is locking in. So pretty cool. That's Millet, and we've got a couple more techniques. We've got Gamut. These are all coming from the grid and the added lines. You can see them paralleling here. These are locked in and paralleled. These are paralleling. So we've got all these repeating lines. That's the gamut. That's unity in a hidden rhythm throughout the composition and adheres to the law of similarity, which is a Gestalt psychology principle. We've also got aerial perspective. The contrast is reduced here, creating depth right here. Sinking him back, this area comes forward with more contrast, and then this area sinks back, creates more depth in the composition. This area comes forward. When we look at the greatest area of contrast, we're going to find that this area has a lot of contrast, okay? This area obviously is pulling our eyes there, but also up here, we kind of don't want all that contrast up there. So if we wanted to, we can reduce the contrast. These are just contrast layers, and the contrast is reduced right here all the way, but just to try and subdue that high contrast there. So then that brings more attention back to this area of contrast down here, which is where our eyes need to be anyway. So always keep the contrast in mind. You want to keep figure ground relationship in mind. See, if you run an imaginary line around the subjects, you want to find that there's nice contrast around them. Obviously, there's some here coming around, and if you squint your eyes, you can usually see this is about the same contrast as over here. So those forms kind of blend together, with the exception of this light brown on top. These forms kind of blend together, but they're standing out from the light hay in the background. This is standing out. This area right here blends in with the background, which is supposed to. It's creating that depth. So basically he's got this with nice figure ground relationship, and we've got them separated here. Okay, so that's figure ground relationship. That's also a Gestalt psychology principle. And that should do it for this one. This is Millet. So if you have a master artist in mind, just leave a comment below and I'll see what I can do to analyze them. So other than that, thanks so much for the support, and I'll see you in the next one.